is taking place at a high pace, that there's often a limited number of planners. And maybe last, also following the city's IPCC report, that planning and design and finance are still identified as 2 of the 6 research areas that need more research to inform action, to make sure that they are more connected and that they can contribute to creating impact. Next, please. So how can well-planned cities contribute to achieve these NDCs, as I just mentioned? So if you look at the emissions from urban sectors, that can be reduced by almost 90% by 2050 if we use sort of the opportunities that we already have today, the technology and the measures that we have in place. And then you can look at the sectors that needed most support is the building sector, transport, materials, and also the waste sector. So, and also imagine the opportunities that 75% of the infrastructure still has to be built. If we do that well, if we do that right, I think we have to do this right, then we can contribute to this transition and to have more resilient, livable and productive cities, to also contribute, actually, see the positive benefits of taking local climate action. Next, please. So I'd like to focus on how can urban planners take action and take the initiative to also work together even better with government, financial actors, communities, and other urban stakeholders. Next, please. For me, I still make use of this very insightful, or sort of, it creates so much awareness of how we can plan or how we should plan. We're still planning a lot of cities that are based on models that produce urban sprawl instead of compact cities. There's still a lot of inequality, segregation in cities, which can be integrated. And congestion in cities is also increasing. We need connected cities, and those compact, mixed-use, connected cities can actually help to also address the climate challenge that we are facing. Next, please. So I think we have to also sort of, in a way, agree we are going to integrate in all the planning that we do from regional to block level, that climate considerations are integrated and promoted, and made sure that they are going to be financed and implemented in the end. Next, please. But we need also evidence to do that. So we can advocate better if we have the right data in place, if we track, and if we can improve the data to make sure we can build the case. And there are several tools for that. So here you can also see a part of the urban monitoring framework, which has been adopted by the statistical commissions to make sure that we have a framework to also measure progress on the SDGs in cities. And then you can see in this graph what is already sort of in present and what are still challenges to work on. There's also other tools that I will highlight some today: our city plans, capital investment planning, observatory of proximities, and the SDG project assessment tool, some initiatives that UN Habitat is working on to create this evidence to inform financial plans. Next, please. And maybe lastly, as part of this planning process, to make sure that, and I think as we are all here discussing these issues, we should be on the same page, but to make sure that the process of planning is integrated and participatory, to make sure that from left to right, from assessment to implementation, that we map the vulnerabilities, that we plan green and blue, but that we also make sure that we prioritize investments, and that should be a key focus of our work to actually create implementation that we, and these are all countries and cities that are working with these tools and processes. Next, please. I hope I'm still on track. But how to bridge that investment gap? So complemented by the quality and the viability of those project pipelines following this planning process. Also, the financial capacity of cities will help to attract and manage sort of different sources of finance. And those also must be considered by the funds and the financiers to make sure that they're also operating at this the subnational level. I think also key to make sure that we bridge the gap is to make sure that we realize that the technical knowledge and skills are with planners, to make sure that the plans, the urban plans that are being developed, that they're all climate resilient and that they produce low carbon urban development projects. And also to make sure that they are identifying opportunities to make sure that those funds and financiers can actually invest in those projects. And beyond project level, urban planners can also work together with city and national governments to advocate for policies and regulations to encourage the right decisions. So they are influencing the targets of countries related to climate. They can influence adaptation plans, they can influence design standards, and also make sure that there are incentives in place to encourage not only private investments, but also household investment, how you can take along the communities in cities to be part of this process. And talking about households, thanks for this slide change. The need to promote localized climate finance is not only to be effective, but also to make sure there's a process of justice. Because most vulnerable and marginalized communities are being impacted by climate change. And if you look at how we can have a just and green transition, we also have to make sure that these resources are channeled to local governments and communities, so they are enabled to adapt to climate change and reduce emissions and build a resilience. And that also means that we have to empower people living close to the challenges at hand, so we also understand the investments are aligned with their needs and context. And lastly, to make sure that there's an accountability in place to ensure that the benefits of climate action are also equitably distributed, leaving no one behind. So as UN Habitat, we are also involved in a number of, we call them vertical climate funds, maybe all familiar to you, to make sure that finance that is meant to be invested in climate action is entering in the place where it's needed most. But that process of submitting projects to access those climate finance opportunities, it requires quite a capacity and a long-term commitment. And we also realize it's not an easy process, and there's still a lot of barriers to face. But just to give some examples where we were able to make sure that the Green Climate Fund or Adaptation Fund or green bonds are sort of being attracted to invest in places needed, is a project in Cuba now to help with an energy efficient housing system. And the Adaptation Fund, it has actually a huge urban planning component to improve the climate resilience of coastal settlements and communities in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And the Jeff-funded project also implemented together with the UN Environment Programme to help cities access innovative and private financing for climate adaptation. So we're, as UN Habitat, also testing and to see and to learn also from this conference today how we can inform good practice and make sure that this acceleration can be done. Next, please. So just to summarize some priorities for action, actually maybe following the the recommendations or areas for action in the presentation. Planners can together work on climate action to develop this evidence-based, integrated, inclusive climate action plans, and or include climate in all the plans being developed, engage with financial institutions in the planning stage to make sure that those mechanisms for finance are being leveraged, and explore innovative financing mechanisms. Build the capacities of national governments and also cities and communities to make sure that they can engage with those finance mechanisms, and to keep on advocating for policy and regulation change, and engage in this kind of multi-stakeholder dialogues. I'm not sure, I think I'm past over time, but we can go more in detail in the discussion, I hope. But how to engage in this global debate, as I mentioned, one of the key actions that one can do. You can share your innovative solutions on the Climate for Cities Climate Action for Cities campaign. I put in the link, I can share my presentation later, so happy to learn from yours. We have Urban October coming up, which also focuses on growth, economy, but mainly also on financing sustainable urban futures. Happy to join and to promote that all together. And of course, the climate conference is coming up, where there will be an urban pavilion, and there's an opportunity to apply for events and demonstrate good solutions, and also to join an initiative on more urban resilience for the next generation.
Thank you, Naomi.